Hi, today I'll talk with you about research designs, which is right for your study. To know which is the right design, first of all, we need to know the differences between the main research designs. A research design is a plan for the study. Just see it as a plan, which means that there are steps to follow that goes with that plan that is chosen. It's just like how you order a McValue meal at McDonald's. There is the meal A, meal B, meal C. You do not mix and match the components of the plan. So, the research design is described in Chapter 3, the very first section. Today, I will introduce to you 5 main research designs: exploratory, descriptive research, survey research, correlation research, and finally experimental research. Whichever one is chosen depends on the purpose of our study. But in terms of the data, let's look at it this way. Exploratory research usually collects qualitative data. Descriptive research might have qualitative or quantitative data. But survey, correlation, and experimental research usually collects quantitative data. First, exploratory research design. We choose this when we are not very sure of the research problem. Example, what factors make students interested in research? Let's say this is an area that is less explored, and therefore there is lack of literature on it. We are not sure what factors will apply to our particular group of students. So the research problem is not clearly defined. We may not start with a clear research design with its components of the plan. Therefore, we do an exploratory research and figure out things along the way. But because the group is so specific, there is an issue if we generalize the findings to a very big population. So the plan is to start with an open research question. Briefly think about the theoretical basis. There surely must be some theories that can explain what is happening, even though we may not be specific on the other parts of the data collection. If it is PhD research or research done by lecturers, they might propose certain frameworks after the analysis. Here is an example of a study with an exploratory research design that my former PhD student did. Teachers and students trans-languaging practices in a Malaysian preschool. Trans-languaging means use of different languages. It has a different kind of mindset when compared to code switching. We were not sure what to expect in terms of the talking between the teachers and the preschool children. So it was a small database for this study. The bigger study had more data, but still we acknowledge that there is a limit to the generalization of the results, but it offers an in-depth analysis of what happens in a preschool classroom. Number 2, descriptive research design. I would say this is the most common research design. Example, what kind of people sign up for Korean language classes? People who love to visit Korea, people who love Korean food, people who just enjoy the Korean movies and want to understand it without translation. So we can conduct a descriptive research design if we want to describe the characteristics of particular individual or group or situation, because we want to understand how something happens, when something happens, where something happens. So all these questions, and therefore we might report them descriptively, just using words if we are collecting qualitative data. But on the other hand, you can report them as frequencies and trends and categories. So you can choose descriptive research design whether you are taking qualitative or quantitative data. In this case, we are more sure of what we are studying. We start with the theory. Based on the theory, we make the aim and objectives of the study, and then we make instruments, collect the data, discuss the results. So this is a very clear plan on how the study should be done. An example here is a study by my master's student, Kirsty Fung, male and female language features in Facebook comments. So there was a clear analysis framework that was made based on a lot of past studies. What you see here is only for the male features. Number 3, survey research design. Example, National Survey of Drug Use. Now, this is the word which is probably the most misused where research design is concerned. People call it survey research design when they use a questionnaire. Actually, that is very wrong. A survey research design means we intend to study the whole population to discover the incidence and distribution of certain patterns in the whole population. But usually only the government has the money and resources to do a whole population study, and that is called a census. Most of us, if we get a research grant, we can do a survey of the whole population, but we take a sampling. We cannot study the whole population. We take a sampling, and I'll talk about sampling in another lecture. But yes, we take a sampling and we can call it a survey research design because we know the details of everybody in that population, just that we use certain method to pick a certain number to sample. As far as the plan is concerned, it is the same as a descriptive research design. It's just that now we are taking the whole population. It might be the whole population of the senior citizens above 80 years old, but it is really the whole population of everybody above 80 years old, and we pick from there using a systematic way. So remember, if we are trying to do a rather small scale study, do not call it a survey research design. Here I show you the map to remind you we are talking about the whole population, not that you have to study the whole big population, but certain characteristics, and yet still the whole population of people with that characteristic you are interested in. Alright, so if Malaysia carries out a census every 10 years, what is it called? Longitudinal study or cross-sectional study? This is actually a longitudinal study because it's repeated after a regular period. Cross-section means one time, as in what we do most of the time. Number 4, correlation research design. Example, is there a relationship between the years of marriage and the personality characteristics of the couple? We have this hypothesis in mind. People become more similar over time. So if they're married for a longer time, they might have more similar personality characteristics. So we collect data to find out whether there is truly such an association. Now, a correlational research design has at least 2 variables that we are trying to correlate. Descriptive research design just now, it could be only 1. Okay. Here we collect quantitative data on variable A, variable B to see whether they influence one another, whether both increase at the same time or one increase, the other decrease. And we need to collect the 2 kinds of data. So we start with the theory because the theory would explain that there might be certain relationships between A and B. We make instruments to make sure that we do collect data about A and B from a particular person. Only then we can correlate them later using Pearson or Spearman correlation test. One thing I would like you to remember here is that this is a correlational research design. We do not do anything to the people. We just collect 2 kinds of data from them. And therefore, we cannot say A causes B or B causes A. We can only say A influences B because we did not do any treatment to the people. An example here, predicting efficacy or confidence and dominance in political conversations, impact of demographic characteristics. What are the variables correlated? Demographic characteristics are correlated with efficacy. Demographic characteristics are also correlated with dominance here. So we studied 2 kinds of correlation here. But of course, not all demographic characteristics can be correlated because some are categorical, like male, female. So here I show you part of a table where it is possible to do a correlation. Father's educational qualification, there is a certain ordinal ranking there from much lower, primary 6 and below, all the way to degree. So we rank them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the sum of scores is for efficacy, how confident they feel about talking politics. So we correlated those two, and the results in the red box shows that there is no correlation. 0.1 is very low out of 1, which is the maximum. But if you just then later report the results using descriptive statistics, you can use the average sum of scores. The higher ones will mean more confidence in talking politics. Number 5, and the last research design, experimental research design. Now, this is actually the strongest research design because we can say what is the effect of A on B. Example, what is the effect of experienced lecturers on the writing of university students in English classes? So of course we have a hypothesis. Maybe more experienced ones can teach writing better. The students end up with better writing skills. Maybe, let's try. So in the experimental research, we aim to study the cause-effect relationships. We want to see how the independent variable, that is the teaching experience here, affects the dependent variable, the students' writing skills. So in this case, we will then pick the lecturers with more experience and those with less experience, and then we will compare the students' writing skills. This one, we did not do anything to the teaching. A more true kind of experimental research, you will actually do something. Maybe the lecturers will use a different method of teaching. Then we see whether the students' writing skills are better or not. So in any case, if there is an experimental research design, the variable that affects something else is what we call the independent variable. In this case, here is the teaching experience. And this one you need to manipulate. That means you go and pick and choose people that you want to study. Or if you have a treatment, you do something to the students. That is the independent variable. The dependent variable is the one that is being affected by all the changes. In this case, here is the students' writing skills. So in the plan, it is very important to plan the treatment carefully because we need to control that. A lot of people, when they do research, they just plan the measurement and they do not bother about the treatment. You need to think through the treatment, and it needs to be based on certain theory if possible. So a sample of a study with experimental research design was done by my PhD student. She measured fluency. She measured the use of communication strategy used. She gave a semester of training to use communication strategies. She measured the two things again at the end. This is the pre and the post. Finally, to sum up, can you try to match the titles to the research designs? Relationship of self-confidence and English language proficiency. When you see the word relationship, you know it must be correlational research design. Number 2, effects of social media use on social interaction skills of students. When you see the word effect and there are two variables here, it is an experimental study. But here you must control the social media use, which means you tell a particular group of students, you must use your social media every day. And another group, you can only use it for half an hour per day during these 2 weeks of the study. So here you actively manipulate the independent variable, which is social media use. Number 3, what happens on the first day of a grade 1 piano lesson? Nobody really knows, so it's exploratory research study. 4, a study of university students' monthly spending patterns. We just want to know what students do with their money. So characteristics, that would be descriptive research design. So hopefully after this lecture, you are more sure of which is the correct research design to pick for your study. Thank you very much.